Joe Biden should not have been the nominee in 20, in my opinion. Kamala Harris was just about the lowest rated Democrat who ran in 2020. Now we've got a guy who has gained $150 million to $200 million in donations. He's the guy who's been saying he's running for re-election. He's not dropping out, not dropping out, not dropping out. Guess what? Max, he's dropping out. So what happens now to that party? We'll talk about the ramifications against Trump, who is now a steamroller. He's not going to be able to be stopped, in my opinion, in November. But having said that, what sort of scrambling is going to happen on the left, and what might they achieve?
Yeah, so I guess just to lay the groundwork for you, the work we've been doing with the Oversight Project is basically looking at how, when, and why the Biden campaign could withdraw, and the different 50-state framework for how that all would work out. I think first and foremost that the Oversight Project can claim total victory here. The DNC cited us as the reason why they're moving up what's called a virtual roll call nomination. So this is getting a nominee before the convention even happens. This is, as far as I understand, still the plan moving forward, how they're going to actually nominate Harris. But the work we've been doing to essentially show the Biden campaign, the Democrats, and the rest of the American public that this whole switching out a candidate is not just going to go easy peasy. Okay, there's a lot of different logistical hurdles that go along with this decision to withdraw Biden. Now, some of the early, there's three different triggering events right now. Where we're at now, since it's been triggered, is pre-convention. All right, so they haven't actually put any candidate on the ballot in any state yet. The earliest state that we've been looking at for ripe litigation opportunities is Ohio. Ohio has a August 7th deadline that they cured with a legislative fix, but that's definitely something that we are still actively engaged with, making sure that the Democrats follow all 50 state rules for withdrawing their candidate. Now, the issue is going to be when they actually nominate. Are they going to nominate before August 7th? Is it going to be as early as next week? Is it going to be Kamala? Joe Biden certainly endorsed her. And as you said, there's a bunch of money issues. It's not going to be a quick, easy, simple transfer of some of the political campaign infrastructure. That's a whole open question. As a lot of election law experts have been saying, it's not an easy cut process. And there's a lot of open interpretation in the FEC rules for how this is all going to shake out.
Max, I want to stop you for a second and reset who you are. Those listening on the radio, News Radio 1200 WOAI, also on all the social platforms where we're showing you this live. It's Max Matthew, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name earlier. Max Matthew from the Heritage Foundation. So let me stop you, and I want to piecemeal some of this. You guys are challenging, rightfully so, everybody who is in this country, whether you're a Democrat and wanted Biden, and now you're not getting what you sent your money in for, or a Republican or a conservative that wants Biden in because he was going to be the nominee, and that's who we've been running against the entire time. You shouldn't be able to just say, I'm going to take my ball and go home. You shouldn't be able to say, I'm now out after he's been running for re-election for a good year and a half now, full-throatedly. Because his party knows he can't win, I don't think we have a system that allows you to say, we're getting closer to the election. We can't win. Let's just switch it out. So that's what you're saying. Those would be the challenges, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So that's, I think it's important for everyone to understand it's a 50-state framework. That's, this isn't just a hodgepodge. It is a hodgepodge. It's not one uniform election. Federal elections are ran actually by the states. So they have a lot of different what's called ballot access laws, when a candidate has to be certified to the Secretary of State of each 50 states so that they can actually be voted on for the election. It's not something that you can just decide to work around. Now, the DNC did make a workaround. They're doing a virtual roll call to early nominate, and that's against a lot of the things that they were originally going to do here. I mean, if it is Harris, again, those primary voters, they didn't vote for her. They voted for Biden. And so it's essentially a backroom drug deal. And
right.
The DNC is going to continue to do what it wants to do, and we're going to hold them to account. That's what the Oversight Project mission is.
It's Max Matthew, Heritage Foundation Oversight Project guy. Again, we've never seen this before. This isn't him saying, I'm ill, so I have to drop out. This isn't him saying, my doctor says I'll die if I continue campaigning. He's just saying, I'm not seeking the renomination. And again, they didn't primary him. He's got all the delegates. Is this in the hands of the delegates now? Joe Biden can say I'm dropping out all he wants. They can still make him the nominee, can't they?
Yeah, so I mean, they could. I
Right?
think
I
that
mean,
that's
they're
part of
not going
the.
to, but they could.
Yeah, they could. I think, look, we're at 106 and a half days now before the election. It's completely unprecedented what the Democrats are doing right now. The Biden campaign has showed that they are inept and cannot win this election, and so they are choosing a lawful process to get him off, but certainly not going to be curing any of the 2020 election confusion issues. Probably the worst election in recorded history, at least in the United States,
Yeah.
and it doesn't help any of that. So I
I
think
want
it's
to I want to
important.
give an analogy. In Max, my brain's going 100 miles an hour because you're so smart and you're getting this done right, and I appreciate you coming on. Max Matthew from the Heritage Foundation. It would be like the World Series is about to happen, and the Yankees are about to take on the Mets, and the Mets say, "I can't win." We're going to have you play the Astros. We're going to have you play some other team. Actually, Astros are American League now. We're going to have you play the Chicago Cubs because I think they have a better chance to beat you. You just can't do that. I mean, this is the guy. This is who they ran. This is the guy who's been the president the past 4 years. He's got another 4 years if he wants it. And every Democrat voter said he was the guy. The Trump campaign has been running against him. So the legal challenges are interesting because, as you mentioned earlier, constitutionally, the federal election is run by the states. The states decide how they'll do it, when they'll do it, who gets on the ballot, who doesn't, although they tried to take Trump off. They couldn't get that done. Is that a good analogy that a sports team says, or a boxer says, 2 nights before the fight, I don't think I can beat him. My brother's going to fight him instead.
Yeah, Joe, look, you got to dance with the girl you brought to the prom.
Yes.
And it's not enough to just say that, we don't want to run our candidate anymore 106 days before the election. I think, what they realize is that their pathway legally is much easier right now. The scenario that we are in right now, essentially withdrawing his candidacy before the convention, before any nomination has happened. Because once he's on the ballot, it becomes all of these state laws that are a little vague about their applicability. They get triggered. And so we would have a lot more opportunities once we have a certified name on the ballot to make sure that the DNC and Democrats and whichever campaign it's going to be are actually following the law.
It's Max Matthew from the Heritage Foundation. This is all very interesting to me. So the primaries have happened. They didn't even let RFK Jr. run in the primaries. They kept him out. There was no debating. Joe Biden's the guy. He's the presumptive nominee. That's why this specific thing that's going on now is why we say presumptive nominee, because he's not really the nominee yet. Those delegates, by law in the individual states, are to Joe Biden. He got them all. Do they have to change state laws now to say that you can now give it to somebody else? Again, if he's in a position where he just physically and mentally cannot do it, that might trigger something different. He's not unable. He just announces that he's not going to do it. And does him saying it's going to be Kamala Harris have any weight whatsoever legally? Or does the convention now say we're going to make it Michelle Obama? It could be Gavin Newsom, or it could be Gretchen Whitmer, or fill in the blank. It could be Hillary Clinton, for God's sakes. What specifically happens? Is there a difference between he is in the hospital and can't do it, and he's just at home at Rehoboth Beach and doesn't want to do it?
Yeah, so I think you brought it up before, Joe, that these delegates are pledged; they're not bound. Now he can give a lot of weight by endorsing Kamala. There's a lot of I think the delegates that were already going to vote for Biden would naturally vote for Kamala. But that's a complete open question. It's not, the rules don't actually bind them to him. So they could have essentially an open floor convention should they get past the first round of the nomination vote and they don't have a majority of votes for any candidate. I think that's why they're going to roll through with their kind of back room, drug deal, cigar smoke filled room, virtual roll call. They're going to essentially say, hey, we know we have a convention, but we're going to do it early. We're going to get our nominee before the convention because that's just how politics work now. I think it's it's not only unprecedented, but it just shows the length to which that the Democrats are willing to inject confusion into this election.
It is Max Matthews. So, I mean, you're right, but there's been confusion for a long time. We just had a week where the former president was shot. We had a week where we saw a convention that was unifying, more unifying than I think a lot of people thought it would be. The Republicans are on a real roll here. Does it matter, in your opinion, Max, who they put up? I know that you're legally challenging, and you should. It should be forced to be Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I think, should be on the ballot in November. I hope that's the case. I want him to be the nominee. Having said that, does it really matter? Because there's nobody who's a superstar in the wings. Nobody is going, man, but if this person were running, it would really, really be hard for Trump to win. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Democrats are in between a rock and a hard place. They don't really have a candidate aside from Biden that has any kind of national recognition. I mean, clearly Kamala does. That's his vice president. But I think that they know that they don't have any kind of real unifying candidate here, and that's a big problem for them. I think that's why they're trying to backroom door deal this. They're trying to essentially make it happen before it's supposed to happen. And I don't know what candidate they're going to pick. I mean, if they go to an open floor convention, it could be complete bedlam. And that would be, I think, what was it? The last time was 1968 or something along those lines.
Right.
It's been a long time. So it's not something that, that they're really prepared for at all.
Now, this is not something that would be considered a brokered convention, is it? This is something different because you literally have the person who's the nominee saying, I don't want it. A brokered convention would be the presumptive nominee or the person with the most delegates does want it, but there's a challenge from other people, right?
Right. And I mean, it's important to point out, they're Dan Phillips, he has 3 delegates, I think, from Ohio that he pledged to Biden. There's the America Samoa candidate. I'm sorry for dropping his name right now, but he has 2 delegates technically. I think the DNC rules are pretty clear cut on how the delegates are not just pledged, but how they actually vote for their nominee. Unless they change those rules, which they still have the opportunity to do so. They have a final rules meeting coming up this week, which they will also vote on the virtual roll call. They have an opportunity to change those rules. So you're right; it may not be a broker convention, but they could certainly, lower the threshold or allow delegates that are already pledged to Biden to vote for someone else if that's really the process they want to go through. I think you brought up another point earlier too. It's this FEC rules, all this money. There might be some instances there that aren't going to exactly make it a copy paste scenario. And that can bring its own challenges and hurdles too. And that's certainly something that the Oversight Project is actively engaged in looking at litigation opportunities for.
From the Heritage Foundation Oversight Project, it's Max Matthew. We appreciate you jumping on. Let's talk about that a little bit. When the money is donated, is it donated to an entity called Biden-Harris, or is it donated to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? The reason I ask is that entity is not running for re-election anymore. And people keep saying, well, it's either got to go to Biden or it's got to go to Harris. It's got to go to both of them. With Harris on the ticket, it will now be Harris dash somebody else. So what happens there? I mean, is the money earmarked for her specifically to where she can take it to a new entity called Harris somebody?
Yeah, so this is that open question I was getting into about it's the FEC rules are a little bit there's an open interpretation. They had a similar instance with Bloomberg running in 2020. He also was a self-finance. He raised a lot of money on his own, but essentially what he did was he took his hard cash, turned it into quote unquote soft money, and dumped it into a super PAC. The FEC okayed that. Is that something they're going to do here? It's an open question. I think there's a lot of discussion about, like you said, is the money strictly to the Biden campaign? This is Biden headquarters. It's currently just Joe Biden. He hasn't actually, it's not the Biden-Harris ticket yet. It hasn't been certified, as far as I understand it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean much in the way of, legal impediments to that transfer, but there's definitely, some in the weed stuff like in-kind contributions, political infrastructure, the actual campaign infrastructure. How does that all get transferred? And is that all going to be up to snuff? That's definitely something that the Oversight Project is looking at and making sure that the Dems follow the law and that we hold them to account.
It is Max Matthew from the Heritage Foundation. We appreciate you stopping on. One last question. Do you think that there will be any switching or shifting of gears when it comes to the Trump campaign? Or you're running against a horrible 4 years. Kamala Harris was part of those 4 years. Why would we change our tactic? Just keep on going like we're going.
Yeah, so just for clarification, as a 501c3, Heritage doesn't really have much say on, the campaign, Trump campaign or otherwise. I think that, what the Trump campaign is doing right now is working. They have a unified message for making America great again. And we are going to make sure at the Oversight Project that this election has integrity and that we do not have a repeat of the 2020 election. So I would assume that the Trump campaign still sees this as full sails ahead and has an opportunity to continue to send its unifying message that we just saw at the convention floor.
It is Max Matthew. I appreciate you taking the time today, jumping on short notice. Max, let's stay in contact and let's talk some more as we go forward. It's going to be very interesting to see the mechanisms on the left and the twisting and turning and them trying to somehow say this is okay, this is fine, this is money was for us anyway, and we're just going to do it. I don't see people rallying around Kamala Harris. It'll be very, very interesting. Actually, before I let you go, and again, I'm not telling you give me an endorsement of what Trump's saying or doing, or tell me how bad Biden and Harris are. Although on the policies we can go down that list. Does it matter who she selects as the second or not?
In terms of, ballot access, not really. It's all going to come down to that nomination date, how they actually nominate her. Are they going to do it next week? Are they going to wait till the convention? That's going to be the only kind of, that's mostly what we're looking at. I don't see how it really would affect the FEC rules either. Again, it's a big open question. All the election law experts essentially say, this is an open area, and opportunities to, make sure that it's all up to snuff are
Right.
limited and few. So we just have to, we're going to stay vigilant. We're going to be watching, and the oversight project is going to make sure that, that they follow the law.
Max, thanks a million. Let's talk again soon, my man. Thanks for jumping on today.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you.
All right, you bet. Max Matthew, he is from the Heritage Foundation. Great information about exactly how this works.